had recorded this psalm as part of the reality of human experience. Sometimes God seems to be on mute. If Pete had wanted a different title, possibly less in touch with those for whom he is writing, he might have used the words of the psalmist, "Out of the depths I have cried unto thee, O God, hear my voice." Justin Cantuar, Lambeth Palace, London.
Introduction to this edition. 1/3 of the world population is locked down by the COVID-19 pandemic as I sit down to read this to you now. For every 80,000 new coronavirus diagnoses, the number of Google searches for the word prayer has doubled. 5% of adults here in the UK have turned to prayer for the first time since this crisis began. Prayer offers profound solace in times of trouble, but it also provokes deep questions. Many people will be wondering why the most heartfelt, desperate prayers of their lives for healing, for protection, are simply not working. Why an all-powerful, all-loving God appears to be so distant, silent, or even absent in their hour of greatest need. Of course, by the time you hear this, the coronavirus crisis of 2020 may be a fading memory. But suffering will not. Eventually, inevitably, every single one of us is compelled to ask the three most painful and important questions. How am I going to get through this? Why is God allowing this to happen? And where on earth are you, God, when heaven is silent? These three questions, explored in this book against the backdrop of the 3 days of Christ's suffering, are sadly both universal and perennial. They are as relevant to me today in lockdown as they were almost 20 years ago when I first began writing this book, and as they will be to you now wherever you are and whatever the circumstances which have brought you to this place. May 2000. Just a scruffy bundle of photocopied notes, folded and stapled together by hand, for early adopters within the fledgling 24/7 prayer movement some 20 years ago. In those early days, long before God on Mute became an actual proper book, I would pass makeshift copies out to anyone I met who was struggling with unanswered prayer, which turned out to be almost everyone I knew. And then one day a respected Christian leader took me aside and begged me never ever under any circumstances to consider publishing this insidious tract. "You're supposed to be the guy who goes around telling us that prayer works," she said. "This isn't what we need to hear. It will disappoint and discourage so many people." I ignored her advice because I believed then, and I am even more convinced now, that the church needs to be as honest as the Bible about the struggle of faith, the pain of life, and the fact that wrestling with the silence of unanswered prayer is not an act of unbelief, but of defiant and deepening faith. The Quaker educationalist Parker J. Palmer puts it like this: "The deeper our faith, the more doubt we must endure. The deeper our hope, the more prone we are to despair. The deeper our love, the more pain its loss will bring. These are a few of the paradoxes we must hold as human beings. If we refuse to hold them in the hope of living without doubt, despair, and pain, we also find ourselves living without hope, faith, and love." Sammy and I are always so moved when we realize that our story continues to help others hold precisely this kind of paradox. Someone told us today that God on Mute brought her back to a real, living, more complicated faith in Jesus. Others talk about how it helped them walk through the pain of infertility, the death of a dream, or a dark night of the soul. A mother confided in us recently that this book was her constant companion as she sat with her son watching him slowly die. Testimonies like these from those whose suffering is often far greater than ours often leave us speechless. I'm grateful, therefore, to the publishers for giving me this rare opportunity, my first in more than a decade, to refresh and update God on Mute in 3.